Have you ever built a feature or an app that wasn't adopted because the business said they couldn't use it? Have you ever gotten to the beginning of a build sprint and didn't have enough information to build from? In this video, Twum-Boafo is discussing gathering requirements which will support you in your Salesforce learning journey. Welcome! It's Rachel and Jessica from 100 Days of Trailhead, the place where the tech community comes to learn Salesforce, learn tech, get inspired, have fun, and invest in ourselves. Whether you are brand new to learning Salesforce and starting from the beginning, or mid-career and skilling up for that new opportunity, we are your trail guides here to support you with an itinerary to help you get where you're going. You are in the right place. If you are new to our channel, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to click on the notification bell so you can be notified when we release a new video. In the description below, you can find links on everything we mention in this video, in addition to links we find helpful like books that have helped us and our friends along our tech and Salesforce journeys. To find other helpful Salesforce and tech content, visit our blog at 100daysoftrailhead.com. In this video, Twum-Boafo is discussing gathering requirements, which will assist you in getting all the requirements before you plan your sprint, or get to your build sprint and realize your team doesn't have all the information they need to build. Jesse is a Salesforce architect with more than 5 years of experience implementing solutions across various Salesforce clouds. He has experience working across multiple for-profit and non-profit industries and sectors. Jesse is currently on the journey to CTA. Your quest, should you choose to take it, is to journey with us through the adventure of learning requirements gathering techniques. Your quest begins now.
Hi everyone, my name is Twum-Boafo and I'm a Salesforce Solutions Architect. Okay, so let's look at the top 5 things you need to know about gathering requirements. The first one is research beforehand. I think we like to think about gathering requirements as starting when we have our first meeting, when we first meet our client, when we first meet whoever the stakeholder might be, and we start the conversation. But actually, it begins beforehand. When you go into that conversation, you want to go in knowing a little bit about the client themselves and knowing a bit about the industry as well. It just helps you to sift out the nuance within whatever you're hearing. So what I like to do is I like to spend some time on the website. Definitely check the website, right? You've heard this from an interview perspective. If you're ever going to an interview, check the website. But this applies very much in the same context when you're gathering requirements. The second thing for me personally is watching a few YouTube videos, and that's purely because I'm a very visual learner, so I find that pretty useful. But I think it's useful in general to watch a few videos about the industry and what's happening in the industry, understand particularly the organization and what they do, what they're proud of, what their mission is. Those aspects help you to better understand where the focus needs to be. And then finally, Trailhead. If you're looking to learn about a particular offering, for example, Marketing Cloud is not a strong point of mine. So if I wanted to learn about Marketing Cloud, I'd turn to Trailhead. A very practical example is going to Trailhead to learn about the recent Consumer Goods Cloud. It was a really fun learning and a good way for me to prepare ahead of an engagement. So I would encourage you to look to Trailhead as the answer to many questions. And the point of doing the research beforehand is that you walk into the conversation able to recognize the unique aspects of the organization, and you can sift deeper into that nuance rather than focusing on what everybody else does anyway. Point 2 is to focus on the process. So a lot of times in the conversation, we end up delving straight into the detail. We don't just want to know that you capture students, we want to know what aspects of the students you capture, and you end up focusing so much, for example, around the student data or the customer data or the program data, whatever that big data is that you need to go into, you end up spending all your time on it before you've truly understood the high-level process. And it's important to understand that process because it helps you to understand how information and data needs to traverse your system. And later that's helpful from a data modeling perspective, but generally speaking, it helps you to know who you're interacting with and when you interact with those people. So if we look at this taking attendance example that I have on screen, I'm using Web Sequence Diagram, which is, it's online and it's free. And I love it because I type a couple of sentences in and I get out a sequence diagram. But whether it's Web Sequence Diagram, Lucid Charts, whatever the tool is that you prefer, whether it's a direct process flow or it is a swim lane diagram, you're welcome to do it. Honestly, my favorite out of all the tools that I use is plain old pen and paper. That's how I get my markers out and I'm in the boardroom or in whatever room I'm in, and we're just drawing whatever it is that we want out, and that I find to be the best way. So as I said, if you are able to focus on understanding the high level process, then you understand how the information flows through the systems and connects with the people, and you know where to drill deeper afterwards. So number 3 is ask actual questions. If you think about the way a conversation goes, you say something and somebody hooks onto a particular part of what you've said and they build on it. They add another element to it. You hook back onto something they've said and you add another block, and gradually we build the wall of our conversation. But that's not the way things happen in the context of requirements gathering. There you have particular outcomes that you're seeking. There are particular things that you want to know. And so you need to think intentionally about actually asking questions. So if, let's take an example statement, which honestly many of us have probably said as a question or is an implied question. It looks like accurate data is a top priority, I would say. And the person you're talking to might say, yes, accurate data is a top priority, or no, it's not a top priority. And that's where the point ends. But if we were to rephrase that and we were to ask, what is your top priority? Then the person might say, funny you asked that question. We've been debating it and we're not actually that sure. We really care about reporting to our stakeholders. The board of directors want to see a bunch of reports from us, and we're hoping that the system will allow us to do that. At the same time, we have been trying really hard to focus on order tracking and improving our order process. It's just broken. But actually, now that I think about it, accurate data has to be our top priority. Like, if we solve the data problem and the accuracy of our data, we'd solve the majority of our problems. Suddenly, we understand that, yeah, accurate data is the top priority. They've confirmed what we understood from the conversations that we've been having. But secondly, we've recognized that order tracking and reporting are two aspects that we need to delve deeper in and would actually deliver a lot of value to the team. So by phrasing your questions as actual questions, you allow yourself to get more than what you think you would get if you were just taking an assumption. So stop assuming and ask actual questions. And then in the interest of conversation, by actually asking people questions, you engage with them, right? No longer are we leaving people to zone in and out as they say yes or no, bored by the third hour of this requirements gathering session. But by actually asking questions, and then it forces people to engage with you, to explain things to you, they actually feel like you're interested in hearing back from them. So ask actual questions. That's point 3. Point 4, make sure you understand why. So very often, again, we focus on the what. We focus on the detail of, this is the form that we need to capture, this is the template for what we need to store in the system, and we forget to ask the why questions. A very, very classic example is taking a paper-based process and digitizing it. And too often those paper-based processes become directly the digital process without there being any thought towards, what do we not need to capture anymore? The common use case is an application, right? And if you think about organizations that see the same people over and over and capture application information for them, there's a big question there. Do I continue to capture the contact information of that person? And if you don't ask why, you might decide, yes, we need to capture it every time because it's on the form. And then you just have repeatedly bad information, or you repeatedly capture the same information. On the other hand, it might be necessary because people's contact details change all the time, in which case, actually, we want the information stored on the application to update the information stored on the contact. And we could do some interesting analysis to see how frequently information is changing. So again, there's an opportunity for value, and it comes out of us asking the why question. But if we just ask the what question, we just have yet another application form that's been gone from paper to being digitized. The other part to it is that some processes are just archaic, right? People do things, you ask, why do you do this? And they say, because we've always done it, obviously. And that's not the right way to think about things, right? By probing into the detail, you start to understand where there's thought, where there isn't thought, where there's an opportunity to make change, and where there isn't an opportunity to make change. So by understanding why people are doing things, by understanding the motivations, you understand why they take on particular activities, and you can identify better ways to do some things or opportunities for efficiency gains. My final tip is frame the conversation. So many of you would know going into a requirements gathering session that you end up talking about many things that you're supposed to talk about, and there's also a ton of things that come up that you're not supposed to talk about. Oh man, what do you do with that? And there isn't a clear way to do it, but what does help is by framing the conversation. Our focus today, the focus of our conversation today, is on topic A, ordering. Or tomorrow we'll be going into order tracking, and so we can discuss things then. And importantly, do we have everyone that we need in the session? How many times have we had a session where we said, we're going to talk about order tracking today, or we're going to talk about reporting, and oh my goodness, we're missing Joanne from fundraising. She needs to be in this meeting, and we didn't include her. And maybe we're lucky enough that we catch it at the beginning. But honestly, if you haven't framed the conversation up front, it's probably something that you find in the middle of the conversation when everyone's like, oh, wait, but that's the part that Joanne does. Oh, Joanne's not in this meeting. I guess we need to have another session with Joanne. And so it's important upfront to frame the conversation because you make sure that everyone's on the same page about the topic and you have the right people in the room to have that conversation. So those are my 5 tips for gathering requirements.
And with that, we're at the end. Have you had success in gathering requirements? What tips do you have to share with us? What video topics would you like to see in the future? Comment below. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you've made it to this point, we want to take an opportunity to say thank you. Since you've stayed with us, here's a bonus. Creating a parking lot document is a good way to keep everyone focused. Let's watch as Jesse explains.
Create a parking lot. So let's think back to framing the conversation. Let's think back to the parts that come up that we don't necessarily know we were going to go into. And now it's actually not the right time. We have 5 minutes left in the meeting. What do we do? In the same way that we're supposed to come up with 5 tips, we have a 6th tip here, right? There are things that come up that we don't expect to come up. And so you create a parking lot. So a parking lot could be on a whiteboard. On a whiteboard, you could have a little part of your whiteboard for that. It could be on a flip chart. It could be on a Google Jamboard. It doesn't really matter where you have it. The point is that you have a place where you can park conversations. And parking conversations isn't saying this isn't going to happen. It's saying that not now. That's purely what it's saying. And what that does is it does a bunch of things, right? Firstly, it focuses the conversation on what we frame the conversation about. So as I said earlier, our conversation is about topic X. This is important, so let's write in the parking lot because we do want to come back to it. So firstly, it helps us to stay on point. And the second part is it acknowledges that what people have said or have brought up is important. Because it oftentimes is important. We're not going to remember everything. Do we remember what the other points were? Was it reporting requirements? Was it order tracking? Man, it's pretty hard to remember this at this point in time. I've been concentrating for 3 hours straight. So by keeping things in the parking lot, it acknowledges it as important and it gives us a place to go back to. So then at the end of the session, when you have time, you can say, okay, guys, we've talked about A, B, and C. Oh, I see we have these aspects on the parking lot. Is any of this really quick and we can cover it right now? Or do we need to have a follow-up session to go through it? We all feel heard, we feel like we've structured it, and we can frame our next conversation.
Thank you for spending time with us. Make sure you like this video. It helps a lot. Click subscribe and on the notification bell so you never miss another video. We also handpick these videos, which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on Instagram, Twitter, and on our website at 100daysoftrailhead.com, all of which are listed below. Thank you for learning with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.